Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting for the
Recording in progress.
I'd like to call the meeting for the Carpinteria Valley Water District to order. Can we have the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So, Norma, can we have the roll call, please?
Actually, I'll be the acting secretary.
Okay, sorry,
so
Bob.
I'll do the roll call. Director Holcomb.
Here.
Director Johnson.
Present.
Director Roberts.
Here.
Director Balch. Director Van Wingerden.
Yes.
5 present.
Then we got item number 3, public forum. Any person may address the board of directors on any matter within his jurisdiction which is not on the agenda. Any Zoom calls? Okay, none. Then we got number 4, the consent agenda, and I'll just walk through each item, and if there's any questions. On item number 4A, any questions from any board members?
Yeah, I think there's an error on the next scheduled meeting is set for November, and that was for the September meeting, so I think that was just a typo. It should be today, October 23, right? Page,
Are you talking about the?
Page 4
On the minutes.
on the
yeah,
minutes.
just a little.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Thanks.
Okay, we'll clean that up. And then item number 4B, any questions from any board members?
Yeah, I have another question. I would like maybe a little report from Norma about the status of Open Edge credit card processing, because I thought we were out of the woods, and now we're back at $345,000 a year for credit card processing fees. And if you take the October amount times 12, and yeah.
Yes, so we're still in the middle of working with our legal and their legal. And I actually just touched base with them today. They've escalated it to their vice president. And I think our legal counsel recommended that we go back for one last try, and then we'll have to make a decision if we want to continue with them or not. And we're stuck at the indemnity section of the agreement. So we're
Who's
requesting.
them? I'm sorry.
Paymentus. So their
The
legal
new
counsel.
one.
The new one is Paymentus.
Okay.
Yeah, we're working on the agreement with them to engage, and so we've been working with our counsel to review the form of the agreement, and there's a indemnity question in there.
Going on like 4 or 5 months, I guess, now.
it's a
Since we
slow-
found
it's a
your
slow process,
solution,
yeah.
your fabulous solution to our problem. And it turns out the problem with Open Edge maybe is because we use some other software that we need from them for our billing, and
Yeah,
they
it
got
seems-
us. So they're charging us these, it's just, yeah. I
Yeah, it seems like
appreciate
we-
everything you're doing. Maybe get angry, I don't know.
There's just a delay. You send them an email and it takes a week both ways to respond to each one. So
Uh-huh.
before they make a change and you send it back, and then it takes another week to get it back. It's frustrating, yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Then we got item number 4C. Any questions on 4C? Director quarterly compensation. Any questions on 4D?
Oh, it's okay, it's okay.
Then we got any questions on 4E?
Thank you.
Any questions on 4F? So if there's no other questions, I would like a motion for...
Ally makes a motion.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Director Holcomb.
Yes.
Director Johnson.
Aye.
Director Roberts.
Aye.
Director Balch.
Aye.
Director Van Wingerden.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Item number 4, unfinished business, none. Then we adjourn the regular meeting, and we're going to go in closed session. Conference with labor negotiator pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6. District negotiator Jeff Dinkin. Employee organization SEIU, Local 620. So
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
We're back in open session, and there's no reportable action on our closed session meeting. I hereby want to adjourn the meeting, the regular meeting for the Carpinteria Groundwater Sustainability Agency. Call the meeting to order. Number 2, public forum. Any person may address the board of directors on any matter within its jurisdiction, which is not on the agenda. Anything, Norma? No Scott Vandekar? No.
No, I will read that into the record on item 4A.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Then we got item number 3, consent agenda 3. I just want to ask if any board member has any questions. Any questions on item number 3A, minutes of the regular meeting of the board held on September 25th, 2024? No one. And then the other question to the board is 3B, disbursement report for September 11, 2024 through October 10, 2024. Any questions from any board members? Then I would like a motion, please.
I'll make some motion.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Director Holcomb?
Yes.
Director Johnson?
Aye.
Director Roberts? Director Balch?
Aye.
Director Van Weerden?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Then we move on to item number 4, unfinished business. 4A, consider request for refund of GSA fee paid by Simple Avo Casitas Pass LLC from the year 2023 for action. Bob?
Yeah, this is back from, whoops, too far. From the last board meeting. And we didn't take action. We didn't have a unanimous board, which was required for a first hearing, but this is the second hearing. So this is a landowner that was assessed $1,423.96 in fiscal year 23 and $2,017.28 in fiscal year 24. The landowner submitted a request to be exempt from the fiscal year 24 fee based on one of the exemptions provided in the resolution 29. Exemption for that year was granted and a refund was issued for $2,017.28. In that same request, the landowner requested an exemption be applied to the fee $1,423.96, but that was for fiscal year 23. And the staff notified the landowner that the time had expired for Resolution 17 for administrative review for that year. And so the landowner requested that their case be heard by the board, which is their option under that resolution to escalate it to the board for consideration. This is an aerial photo of the property in question, and this is Highway 150, which is coming down. Ventura's over here. It's coming down, and Stanley Park is right here. You can see the green shaded area is actually the edge of the basin, so they are partially within the basin, and so these two parcels were assessed the full fee in 2023, which was an acreage-based fee at that time, and then this parcel was assessed this area within the green shaded area that's also within the red parcel. That's how the 1,400 was calculated. And so that fee was applied. There was notice given both through mass notification and direct mailing. And so staff made this recommendation at the last meeting that there's no basis to waive those fees because in the resolution it's clear that it has to happen within a certain period of time. So any questions?
So 2023, it was based on acreage overlying the basin, right?
I believe so, yes. Yeah.
Thanks.
But then, didn't we talk last month that this was based on 30 days? They didn't give the 30-day notice, but you were working to extend it to 90?
We were working to, the new one, where we were working to extend it to 90, but we've actually, since the last meeting and the feedback that we received, just changed it completely to the end of the fiscal year is the deadline, so there's no confusion about when. But in this resolution, yes, there was a 30-day requirement, but they were clearly way out of the
Sure.
30 days.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, so how has it been modified then in the future? Just to say the end of the year?
Yes, we'll get to that.
Oh,
It's the
never
next
mind.
item, yeah.
Sorry. Okay, thank you.
So, good. And again, we need to be consistent with all our customers, so is there any more questions for Bob?
I did get a public comment, if
Oh.
you'd like me to
Go ahead,
read
please,
into the
Bob.
record. This public comment is from Scott Vanderkar. Says, I think that appropriate notice was given to property owners regarding the CGSA fee process and that Simpatica Simple Avo was remiss in not paying attention to both the multiple notices and the CGSA fee as it appeared on the property tax bill. However, I do, in their favor, want to make the comment that it's very unlikely that they are in the basin, but they may be in the basin watershed. If so, both the irrigation water and the water from the Casitas Creek that passes through their property may contribute to the basin recharge. To his comment regarding they're not in the basin, this is the basin boundary defined by Department of Water Resources in Bulletin 118, so they're clearly within the basin.
Okay, any more questions? Can we have a motion to deny the customer request?
Polly makes a motion to deny the customer request.
Well, I'll second. Go ahead.
I'll second.
Go ahead. Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Director Holcomb?
Yes.
Director Johnson?
Aye.
Director Roberts?
Aye.
Director Balch?
Aye.
Director Van Weerden?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Then we move on to item number 4B, consider resolution number 034, establishing a fee variance process for assessed the year 25, the Carpinteria GSA fee for action.
Yeah, the new resolution is in your packet, and so I'll kind of go through some of the stuff that I went through last board meeting. So the resolution, its purpose is to define how you can contest the fee as it is applied to your property. And it's based on a mismatch between calculated and actual crops. So the staff at the GSA does a calculation of crop area of every parcel, and then uses that area to calculate what the estimated groundwater pumping is, which then is used to calculate the fee. Can be based on evidence of reduced groundwater extraction or no wells. So the calculation's not perfect. We use data of other parcels, and in some cases there may be enough error in the calculation that there's evidence of less water being pumped. For example, a meter would be good evidence that water's pumped that may be less than what we estimated. And then other credible evidence showing the fee is disproportionate or inequitable, and that could be records that show that irrigation is actually less using schedules and that sort of thing. The procedure to submit a request for review is you have to pay the fee under protest, and then submit a request by or prior to July 1st, 2025. And so this is where we changed from the last time, the 90 days and all that, 30 days, 90 days after you pay. Just makes it simpler just to say by the end of the fiscal year, because we close our books at the end of the fiscal year, and that's part of the problem is we don't want to go back to a previous year and try to pull that money back out. The third step of the process would be meet with the CGSA executive director to review basis of request within 30 days. property owner will then be notified of the finding of the administrative review within within 15 days of that meeting. If the property owner doesn't like the outcome, then they can appeal administrative findings to the board of directors, which is what Simple Ava did. If they do file an appeal to the board, they have to file the appeal within 15 days of the executive director's decision. It has to be placed on the agenda within 45 days of receipt of the request. And then the board may grant partial grant or deny the appeal. And board's decision is final. These are all the terms in the resolution. So staff's recommendation is to adopt the resolution 34, adopting an administrative review variance appeal process for the CGSA fee imposed to fund the administrative and implementation costs of the CGSA.
Okay, any questions? Casey?
I just have a couple. So the pay under protest part, does that mean they have to do something beyond just paying their bill? Do they have to like,
They just write on the bill under protest.
and if they don't, they can't contest it?
What we're trying to avoid there is people sort of noticing, oh, I paid this, and then going back and saying, oh, you know what, I actually didn't mean to pay that. You know, it's a simple thing. We could strike that. It's just a simple thing that you pay it under protest.
But they're paying the county, right?
They're paying the county.
So you would get the document that they mailed in?
Yeah, in previous years, what they would do is they would write under protest and then photocopy it and bring it or submit it to the GSA.
And so like I pay electronically, how would I accomplish that?
I suppose you would have to print it out and pay it under protest.
But the idea is that if it's not under protest, it is not appealable?
Yeah, that was the idea, meaning that may be a holdover from the 90-day thing where you had to pay it and then you had 90 days. Again, we could strike that, or we could revise that. It's not critical for the ordinance.
And then the only other kind of similar question, I guess, is so if it's not timely, they can't protest it?
Yeah, they have to timely pay. That's part of the resolution.
And so if I protest it, you go to the county and check when it cleared or
do.
whatever?
We do, yeah. We check the amount because we don't want to refund more than they've paid. So if they paid a partial amount, we wouldn't want to refund the whole thing.
So what if I paid my October billings on time and my second billing late?
You would only get, if your appeal was approved, you have to submit it by July 1st of that, and then we would review it, and you would only get back, if we did say, okay, we'd only get back that first payment. Because we have records of what the county has received from that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Do I have to write under protest on both payments?
Again, that,
Yeah, I'm just trying to like
yeah.
figure out the mechanism, right? So
Yeah,
like
yeah.
these little like kind of weird things where I don't
Yeah.
know if people would know, like, oh, you didn't write under protest, like thanks for paying.
Right.
So I'm just trying to make it like easy enough where like the appeals could be rational, and if
Yeah,
we come
you
back
know,
and
the-
say, oh, you didn't write
the-
under appeal or
The
under
concept
protest.
of paying under protest is that you're not acknowledging that it's a correct fee. That's really what the point of paying under protest. If you, I'm not sure how it's written, but if we could interpret that to say, we could interpret that to just ask the question, did you pay it under protest? If they say yes, then they qualify. But I think the intent was that they not pay it, right? That's
Sure,
that's
right.
not their way of protesting.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
pay it, but it's under protest.
Well, what I actually liked about to say that you were saying at the time that you were paying it that was under protest, that you were acknowledging at the time and not afterwards, not after, oh, wait a minute, I made a mistake or I didn't look at that clearly enough, or geez, I talked to a fellow farmer and I don't know. So what I liked about that, and I take your point, electronically, and how do you do it? That's a good point. But the way I interpreted that was we want them to say when they're paying, I know that I don't owe this amount, and so this is under protest, and I'm going to follow the process and explain why I don't owe it. That's why I thought it made sense.
Yeah, I mean, doesn't say under written protest, so we could interpret that as just asking the question. Again, I think it's more that they pay it, even though they don't think it's
Yeah,
appropriate.
sure. Yeah, you can't appeal it if you don't pay it, right?
Right.
There's nothing to appeal.
Right.
Hey, are we okay with the timelines? You're all right with 15 days and 45 days getting it on the agenda for the board?
Yeah, those are reasonable times.
Okay. Seems a little tight to me, but, okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I don't know that we need to say under protest. I mean, we can interpret it a lot of different ways. I'm trying to figure out how you could wordsmith it to,
Well, but it's pretty clear, if somebody looks at their bill, they disagree, they mark it under protest, either you have to send in a copy or mail it in, but I agree with Bob also, you don't want these people after the fact, say, hey, I screwed up, I'm gonna.
They didn't say it at the time. They
Well,
thought,
but they did, right? If we're giving them until July 1st, aren't we giving them the time to look at it? Like,
Yeah.
I have to sit there and now analyze my GSA bill, like, to figure out.
Right,
I
no,
don't have that.
no, that's true, so actually, they can look at it before they pay it, and they still got that much time. So in all fairness, we're giving them plenty of time, so it is,
Well, and I'm sure there's got to be some legal, consumer legal rules as far as, and perhaps it would happen to be a collection agency specialty. Yeah. Anyway, specialist. That, and also I think it helps them to pay, if I pay without any protest, then I'm acknowledging I owe this. And it's kind of goes along with you write a check for something and you say paid in full, and then they go back and they say you owe more money. I think it makes it more clear. I think it's good. I don't have any problem with that, and it might get people to pay, because you can't, I don't think this is right, I'm not gonna pay, then, that's a big mess. And everyone is paying their own property tax, and then you're gonna have people just try it, and that's not good.
I just think the vast majority of people will not know that they have to write under protest.
Well,
Well,
yeah,
I think-
again,
I don't want
Yeah,
that
he's
to be
made
the
it-
argument on
yeah.
how they're becoming ineligible for the
that,
appeal
isn't that kind of why
process.
we're here?
well, again, it doesn't say they have to write it on anything. They just have to pay it under protest. So it's a conceptual under protest. So as we administer the program, we can just say they paid it. Obviously, don't believe they should have paid it, so they're appealing that. And that's good enough for us.
Matt,
Yeah,
is
I mean,
there a
that's the
phrase that
protest,
you?
right, is the appeal.
Right.
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 Is
so
there
you
a
want to
phrase
make a
you wanna
change
use
in
better?
the document then or not?
I think we can interpret it, we can interpret under protest as their state of mind. We don't have to have a written
Right.
under protest.
Filing the protest is the protest, okay. then.
Matt, is there a phrase that you would want to use in?
No, I was thinking about it and, I don't know if under protest is a technical, term of art. In common language, yeah, I just am mad about it, so I'm protesting. State of mind.
I don't know if council has any feedback on that.
In a side question is, you don't pay it and you get a 10% penalty, right?
True.
I mean, as long as it stays on the property tax bill, you're a day late and you get 10%, but the county holds that money.
Yeah, we don't get that.
That's all
Yeah.
just a county dividend.
That's administrative
Yeah. Yeah.
penalties from the county.
Well,
Yeah, council has a,
I would also say if we remove the under protest, the consumer, the customer might think, oh, I have to pay this whether I like it or not. And that is essentially forcing them to make payment. So do you follow? I think adding it will help erase the logic or the argument that they were forced into the payment to begin with. And that opens up another issue. So if it's must first timely pay the assessed GSA fee,
let me ask you this question. You get your property tax bill and you see it, you have to wait until you pay it before you protest it? Or can I get my property tax bill like we've all gotten in the mail recently and just come right down to the district and say, I don't like this, there's something wrong with this. I want to protest it now, before I pay it.
You could protest it.
Right, you
Right.
can do that.
No, you can't.
You can say that, but you have to pay it.
Yeah.
That's a condition. It says must first timely pay the assessed GSA fee.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly I get those calls often where people call and say, what's this fee on my bill? I don't like it. But they still have to pay it.
So in that scenario, let's say there's a calculation error, right? You add a 0. I've got a $10,000 GSA bill instead of 1,000. I got to pay it first before you'll talk to me about how it's wrong?
That's the way the fee is. I mean, we may have recourse in adjusting with the county.
With a clerical error.
I was going to say that would probably be like something for us to easily check on our files to say, oh yeah, we put in an extra 0, and then there's a form that we can fill out with the county to adjust something.
Okay, well, we can just
Well,
sail with this.
So council, are you recommending we leave it in or take it out?
I'm recommending we leave it in. But our council isn't the one who drafted it, it's the CGSA.
Okay. Well, we want to be crystal clear that you got to pay before you appeal, so, and I think we cover that, so. Can we have a motion, guys?
I move to
Polly seconds.
accept.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Then a roll call, please.
Director Holcomb?
Yes.
Director Johnson?
Aye.
Director Roberts?
Aye.
Director Balch?
Nay.
Director Van Wingerden?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-1.
Then we go on to item number 5, new business. Consider engagement of Groundwater Solutions Incorporated for GSA annual report preparation in an amount not to exceed $34,828. For information, Bob?
Yeah, this is something that we took care of last year in April, or closer to April. It's due in April. I think we adopted this last year in January, or this year in 2024, January. And it's essentially the annual report due on April 25th to Department of Water Resources, and it's looking at the progress that we're making on the GSP. So remembering that the GSP was produced and it has management actions and projects in it. So those are, some of them are many years, long-term projects. Some of them are shorter-term projects. And there are certain goals or milestones set in the plan, and so we have to go through the plan and look at the data and see where we are, and then report that to DWR. Last year was the first year, and GSI Water Solutions prepared a proposal for $50,000 and used all of the $50,000 in developing and producing the annual report for 2024. I had feedback from the public and the board about, is there a way we can reduce this amount by doing some of the work in-house? And so this year's our wade into the water on that. And so we negotiated with GSI to lower their cost so that we could work with them to produce the annual report to $34,800 and some change. And the goal is by 2026 that we'll do it completely in-house. There may be some hydrogeologic calculations that need to be made, but I believe those costs will be pretty minimal. The rest of the report should be doable in-house. I see that it was for information, so I won't ask you to make this. I made this recommendation, so I'll bring it back at the next GSA meeting for approval.
Okay.
Can we ask, can we wait till next?
No, you can ask.
So it's due April. Who physically sends it in? And I'm just thinking about a year ago, or maybe it was, this thing had to be in October. It had to be in October, November, and then it was late. I didn't know why it was late, but it was late for some reason. And we got it in, but so I was just wondering who physically, when it's do it
You up,
first? Or people do-
yeah, so last year GSI uploaded it to the Sigma website, Sigma portal is what they call it. And it wasn't late, I mean, it was on time.
Okay.
So,
And they will do it again?
well, in this case, we'll be doing it in-house, yeah.
That's part of the discount? Okay, thank you.
Shirley?
Yeah, I have a point or a question. I would understand the first report. Number one, what is the exact title of the report that it's made to the DWR?
GSA annual report.
Just called GSA Annual Report? Okay. And there's only one annual report?
Each year, yes, there's.
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. And so I would understand why the first one would be a heavier lift, and not just the fact that staff is doing, I mean, you know, the consultant's doing more and the staff's doing less, but that it should be less each year because you've already set up your groundwork in your templates. So, so I'm glad it should be less this year than.
Yeah, it's less,
Not just because staff is doing more, because there's less to do, I would hope. How's that working out?
no,
Is it getting more
no,
to do?
the data has, some of the graphs and that sort of thing will be automated. And so that was a lot of the work last year, setting up all of those graphs so that you could dump the data in. They would just update the graphs. There are some maps that will need to be updated, take special software. So those might not be as, we won't be able to pick that up with staff as quickly because we'll have to learn the softwares and we'll have to, get all of the
Maps. Oh, is
maps.
that all the, like, because we've been doing all these adjustments with landowners and they're correcting our data and we're adjusting our data? Is that what the maps?
like maps, like water level maps, for example, contour maps of water levels. So we're basically measuring water levels every 2 months in the basin. So you do a, 2024 map in the spring, and then you compare it to the 2025 in the spring, and you compare to see if water levels are going down or up, or if there's low spots, that sort of thing. And then you have to make a calculation about the total difference in volume. So you're trying to extract from the data both images, graphics that communicate information, but you're also doing some calculations that require some understanding of how groundwater works.
Wow, so the state is going to be collecting all this data from every groundwater basin. That's going to be phenomenal.
Yeah.
Detail, I mean.
Yeah, and additionally, we're looking at, we're asked to answer questions about how are you progressing with your management actions, for example, and we have to look at each management action and we have to generate a narrative about whether or not we're moving forward. If we are moving forward, what's the schedule? What are the next steps? What's been done so far? That sort of thing.
Wow, okay, thank you, very interesting.
Any more questions? Then we'll move on to item number 6, Executive Director's Report to the Financials, 6A. Bob?
I'm going to let Norma handle this one.
Yeah, their information. As you can see, we don't have our revenues yet. I think the property tax bills are due next month. So as soon as those get paid, we usually get a disbursement around December. So we'll start to see some revenue coming in then.
I have a question about the disbursement report. What is a bank analysis fee?
So those are fees that U.S. Bank charges the district depending on its balances. So yeah, I was looking at that this month too, and I'll be working with them to figure out how we can lower those costs.
Is that that's the monthly fee is $329 to have the checking account there?
It's based on the balances that you keep and the instruments, checks that you write. So they go through an analysis of what you're writing, what we're processing, and then they come up with some amount. So
Yeah, okay.
Good question, it's a
seems
handful
excessive.
of checks.
yes. Yeah, and it has to do with the balances that you keep as well. So I do have the message into our representative to find out what we can do to lower those costs.
If that's just you're having a checking account fee and that's a monthly, that seems
It's excessive, yeah.
absurd.
Well, not just that, since they have all our other accounts, they really should be waiving all these fees. So maybe you want to sit them down and tell these boys, hey, enough is enough. I'm serious. We're going through the same thing. It's kind of ridiculous. I mean, it is. So, and if you don't ask, they're not going to do anything until you tell them that you're moving to Montecito, and I can guarantee you're going to get all your fees waived. So.
I'll get back to you with more information on what comes before me.
Okay, any other questions on the financials? Then this meeting is adjourned. And then we re-adjourn the regular meeting of the Carpinteria Valley Water District. Item number 8, new business. 8A, consider a water supply intensification policy update. For information, Bob and the Mesa.
Yes, so we've talked about this several times in the past few board meetings, and we're ready to wrap it up. So Meso's here to kind of tell you where we're at and what the next steps are.
Hi, everyone. So there's no new information tonight. The idea is just to recap what we talked about previously and discuss whether there were any public comments received during the public meetings that occurred between the last meeting and this meeting. And the hope is that next month we could then ask for adoption of the 2 ordinances. So I'll just recap a couple of things. There should be a staff report, 2 ordinances, and a PowerPoint in your packet. And I think there was a correction to one of the ordinances, so hopefully you were handed a second ordinance. So look at that one for 24-3 instead of the one in your packet. So I'll just start by with the staff report mentioning there's 2 things that we're doing here. One is we are proposing some minor updates to the existing allocation ordinance. And the idea there is just that as we've gone through the process of developing the intensification fee calculation methods, we've come to a couple of conclusions about things related to the allocations that should be updated. So the 2 main things that we're updating in the allocation ordinance, and there should be red line track changes in that ordinance, and then this is summarized in the staff memo as well. First, we're revising the methodology to provide an allocation for meters with no historical use. And we are using a reference point from a neighboring agency there. So we're saying if there's an existing meter but no historical use, that meter would then be allocated the average for their customer class and meter size at half of whatever that amount is. Currently, they would have an allocation of 0. The second thing is we are just adding language to describe when the district will consider revising allocations. And a lot of that has to do with the intensification methods because it's most likely allocations would be revised through the intensification calculation and related fee. So just, I want to recap the proposed intensification methods. So we have the slides for that. I want to start by just identifying what projects are subject to this calculation, because the idea here is that we're trying to capture substantial changes on a parcel and not minor changes someone is making to their house or their landscaping. So the 2 trigger points are essentially someone is adding meters to a parcel and then they're changing the land use. So they're demolishing buildings, exceeding the density, or maybe subdividing a parcel. And the way we're defining those things is by referencing existing language, so like the city's general plan, county ordinances, things like that. So what we're trying to capture, big changes on a parcel, defined in those couple bullet points there. If you'll go to the next one, we also just want to call out a couple of things that are exempt. So accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units, and also residences on agricultural parcels, as long as they don't exceed the density expectations there. Also, you could think of a lot of things which would just not trigger what I previously mentioned and therefore be exempt. So like minor changes to landscaping, house remodels, things like that are not gonna trigger this.
Is the ADU and JADU exempt by law?
Basically.
And the ag parcels, is that the same?
There's, so we currently allow something to be classified as an agricultural customer and have a dwelling unit on it, and we call it a residential equivalency unit. And then within, I don't remember whether it's the city or the county ordinances, they define how many of those residences can be on an agricultural parcel and still have it be considered agricultural. So it's just there, it would be in keeping with what is considered the land use there. When adding a residence wouldn't be changing the characterization of that parcel as agricultural. So that's the idea there.
So if they allow two, I have one, adding one wouldn't count,
Right.
but it would on any other non-ag parcel.
Yeah. Yeah, if they needed a separate meter and they were adding floor space. Yeah. Although you could also think of it too as the amount of water for one extra house would probably not be that significant, but yes, it would trigger the review at very least.
On a residential parcel.
Yes.
Because on an ag parcel, you're allowed main house, guest house, and 4 ag worker housing units. So that would be all exempt then, which is only fair, but I'm just saying it's, okay.
And just to recap what the formula is, which is very simple, Bob, if you'll just go to the next slide. So intensification is really just what the proposed water use is, and how much that increases the existing allocation. So the proposed water use would come from the developer using standard tools like the MWELO there, and the City of Santa Barbara's demand factors, and the existing allocation follows the methodology which we have previously adopted to assign each individual account an allocation. So using standard best practice methods there. And that's really the basis for how we calculate intensification on a parcel. If that calculation is triggered, we will then, after adopting this methodology for calculating intensification, we'll then start talking about how we calculate the fee per acre foot if there is intensification. The ordinance 24-3 is the new ordinance. So 24-2 is just the minor allocation changes and the red lines there. 24-3 would be the new ordinance describing everything I just mentioned for the intensification methodology. So again, November board meeting, we would like to ask for adoption of that 24-3, and we will also start talking about the methodology for the impact fee.
Any questions?
I have one. So increasing the overall floor area, that's by 1 square foot, that's unlimited in small size?
I could so what we're doing there is we're trying to reference existing language in the city and county ordinances in terms of, and the general plan, in terms of how they characterize development and redevelopment. So I could see if they have a square footage trigger, which we may want to use. However, again, I think at that point, we could always say it's staff discretion, that it's not worth it, or that the dollar amount associated would be so small as to be insignificant. So we could definitely look into that.
Because the goal is to capture increased
Substantial changes.
intensification, right?
Yes.
If I'm adding a bay window, it's not the goal here.
Right. Yeah.
Shirley, any?
Nope.
Polly? Good.
Good.
Mesa, I thought you mentioned you invited some of the local developers to give their
yes.
input. What, did anybody show up?
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I glossed over the public meeting part. I meant to address that. So we did hold 2 public meetings, same topic, just 2 different dates for people to attend. We put flyers out at the district office as well as City Hall, and advertised it on social media. And then we also sent emails to a couple of specific people who are in the development community. We had maybe 3 different groups, so 4 individuals total show up between the 2 meetings. So we also had 1 public comment via email. No one had any specific changes to the methodology. yeah, not a lot of public input.
Right, they agreed if they're going to use more water, they got to pay for that.
I don't know if they would agree by showing
I
up,
mean-
but
Okay.
So we had 4 and 1 remote between the 2 meetings.
one comment submitted via email, I do not believe that person attended either meeting, and then separately, 1 person at the second meeting and 3 at the first.
Good.
Okay. And
Thank you.
That was for information only, right? Thank you, Mesa. Going to number 8B, consider a license agreement between the Carpinteria, Summerland, and Montecito fire districts to co-locate communication equipment at Shepherd Mesa Tank. For information, Bob.
Yeah, this is back from 2023, actually, the end of 2023. The both Carpinteria, Summerlin, and Montecito Fire District approached the district and requested additional facilities at its Shepherd Mesa Tank. There are some existing co-located facilities there owned by the fire districts, an existing directional antenna, and a pedestal with radio equipment on it. You can see on the picture here. Proposed is a new pedestal with additional microwave radio equipment, and an additional antenna on this. That's a microwave antenna. That existing equipment is under an existing license agreement that was put into place in 2013. And during the last presentation that we had in 2023, staff identified some considerations for this new equipment. Staff requested that an outreach plan be developed for the neighborhood, and that was done. There was a public meeting held at the Lions Club to discuss the item, and there were no attendees, so it wasn't that interesting apparently to the people on Shepherd Mesa. So we moved past that. We also requested a separate electrical meter for the equipment, and ultimately decided that the fire district would just take over the existing meter, and we would use power off of that meter. Negotiation of the license agreement, we're in the process of doing that, and so we'll have our council look at the current form. They have had their council already review and approve the current form, so we're close to a point where that will be ready. And then finally, we requested that they verify that their equipment, we still haven't received the specifications for it, but we verify that their equipment won't interfere with our radio equipment, which is located and for the purposes of SCADA system. So these two remain incomplete, and we're working on those relatively. They should be complete relatively soon, and if they are complete by November, we'll bring the license back for approval. As I said, the key features of the license right now are shared responsibility of electrical costs, maintenance of driveway, and tank access. Tank access, so on the tank there's actually a ladder that's part of the tank, and a safety climb equipment that has to be maintained. So both agencies would use that equipment, and so in the agreement it specifies that those costs to maintain those pieces of equipment would be shared. Additionally, fire district will hold harmless the district and indemnify from claims from third parties. And then the district also makes no warranty on the property, so we're not guaranteeing that the property is sufficient for their use, or has been inspected for any issues. It's up to them to inspect the property. And then finally, fire district will reimburse all district costs to implement and maintain the license agreement. So mostly that's going to be preparation of this agreement and review of plans. So as I said, no action today. It's for information, but if we can get the last two items completed by November 13, we'll bring it back for approval.
Any questions?
I would just take up the apostrophe. I don't know why there's an apostrophe on the previous slide under fire districts. Number 2 and 4. Didn't you mean to say districts plural or
Oh, good catch. Yes.
just those two? Thanks. I mean, in case it finds its way into the agreement. That's
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Then we go on to item number 8C, consider draft Carpinteria Valley Water District procurement policy for information, Bob.
Yeah, this is something that staff started working on several months ago, and we thought it was going to be a easy lift, but it turns out it's fairly complex, and so we've been working on it. And there's a draft version in the packet, but that will change significantly from what you're seeing by the time we bring it for adoption. But I did want to go over some of the sections and kind of talk about some of the areas that we're trying to capture in this policy. So policy covers from funding procurements. Basically, there are methods to fund a procurement. The main way is through appropriations, which is typically adopted through the budget annually. So the budget is appropriating funds for various activities each year. There are cases where we use reserves for various projects and the sort that weren't budgeted. So those would be another mechanism of funding. We receive grants and loans from state and federal government agencies, so those are also fall under the policy. And then finally we receive from time to time deposits from third parties to construct various facilities. So for example, if a development is going in, they're going to put a deposit in for us to construct a main extension to serve their project. And so we deal with those funds differently than we deal with other district funds like appropriations and reserves. So in order to control how funds are expended, there's a structure of authorization on expenditures. The budget in itself doesn't authorize us to spend money. It only appropriates the money. So that's why we bring expenditures to the board. There are limits to that. We don't want to bring, $5 expenditures to the board. And so in the policy, it will outline what the board authorization is limited to. And so there are some exceptions to that requirement. There's also the ability of the general manager to authorize, and currently under the policy it's $20,000 or less, but as expenses go up, we wanted to adjust this to $30,000 or less. So under the general manager's authority, the general manager can authorize expenditures and purchases up to $30,000 without board approval. There are some requirements for reporting under that authorization. So when that amount is, or close to that amount is spent under the authorization of the general manager, typically I would come back and report that expenditure, and it's also in various other reports. There's a number of instruments that we use to track and manage procurements. Purchase orders are one that are commonly used for lower value procurements. And then if there are going to be larger expenses, we'll typically turn to contracts. There's contracts for construction. Those are very different than contracts for professional services, for example. We have a template professional services agreement that we use for those types of engagements. Construction, we can use a template agreement, or we can use what we call a front end, which is is defined by various groups on how you administer a construction contract. And then we have the annual maintenance contracts where we get bids from various contractors, and we come every year to get those approved for on-call, typically on-call constructions. There are credit cards, so the managers all have credit cards, and those can be used for purchases of various values up to, I believe it's 5,000, yeah, 5,000 a month. And those are also reported in the financials, or just, I guess it's the disbursement report. Yeah. There's petty cash, which is available in the office for basically unexpected expenditures, fairly low value. There's a tracking system for those. There's check requests. So if we don't have a contract, they don't take credit cards, they don't take cash, there's a check request that we can make. So for example, this is often used when we make deposits to other agencies for fees. Good example is when we apply for a permit from the city or from the county. They immediately say, well, we need a $5,000 deposit. So that would be a check request. Open charge accounts, there are a number of companies in town and in Ventura that allow us to have a charge account in which we just go in and purchase equipment and materials, and then they send us an invoice at the end of the month. And then if a employee or a director has expenses that they want reimbursement, there's an expense reimbursement request form that can be used to track expenses or expenditures. So in terms of procurement methods, these are a few. There are others, but we typically use all of these. Sole source, if then there are certain conditions are in place, we can use a sole source procurement. We also go for, we try to get competitive bids unless there's a reason why we can't or are unable to do that. And then there are negotiated prices, which happens after you've either received a bid and it's out of the budget range, or if you have an example would be with GSI, we negotiated a lower cost than they were proposing. Controls. So there is a system in place. It's never really been documented, but it's sort of embedded in the audits and the accounting controls, and that includes review of invoices, review of delivered materials and services, and then budget management. And so all of those go along with procurement just to make sure we're actually getting value for the money that we're spending. And then with all of this, there's also exceptions to every rule, and so we wanted to try to identify those exceptions. And so this is, as I said, a work in progress. We'll bring it back when we're a little further down the road, but wanted to get your feedback, if any, at this point as we continue to develop this document.
Norma, you might want to see what Kachima has in their procurement.
Yep, I can
policy
request a copy.
and see how close the content is.
I guess my question is, there's obviously a government code that regulates all this in the state of California, and I'm not sure, I used to work in a municipal government, and we had our internal policies, but none of them could be more liberal than the state law that govern us. And I don't know if that's in the public contract code or if it's in the water code or where for.
I believe it's in the government code and certain public contract code sections for construction, public works construction, yeah.
So unless I'm mistaken, we can't be any more liberal than or more loose than the state law.
I think that's correct, although there's some areas in the state law that allow you to define your own process.
And so getting to my suggestion, I think we should reference the state law that's pertinent to our procurement policy and our contracting.
Okay.
And then really even, I think a document that works great is if it's, here's what the state law is, and here's what our further refinement of our policy toward that is. And that structure, an employee can pick that up and read it and say, okay, here's what I got to follow.
Right.
And we never did that where I worked. It was always, okay, here's what our thing says. I better go check what the state law says and make sure
Right.
that there's no conflict. But that would be my suggestion.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
It's helpful. Shirley?
Yeah, I wanted to back up a minute and kind of see what the purpose of this exercise is in your thought process in the first place, because I'm sure in how it has changed, I'm sure I think we've revised it twice since I've been here, purchase policies, and at least I think. And you pointed out that one of the changes is the general manager's discretionary amount's gone from 20,000 to 30,000. That makes sense. What else has been why are you doing this now, and what else has changed? For instance, the credit card is up to 5,000. Has that been changed since previous? No, it was 5,000 before. Okay, Norma's saying. And it seems like some of the right off the bat, like procurement, sole source, competitive bids, negotiated price. It seems like there's nothing required, really. We're going to try to do this if available, and then, I don't know, you might go a whole year with no competitive bid purchase. So, yeah, that's my other point, is it seems kind of open-ended, the way it's worded here.
Yeah, there are, I'm not sure if it's in this particular version, but there are proposed in our development of this some constraints on when you have to get 3 competitive bids for any procurement. There are exceptions to that. For example, if it's a specialized type of work and there aren't enough competitive bidders.
Yeah, I don't want to wait and go into the weeds on each item, but I want to know why are you doing this now, and what is the overall changes in.
Yeah, I think the reason why we're doing it is we had many practices and procedures and policies that are just spread out all over the place, or not really in one document, one policy. Wanted to pull all those together, including what the, what was in the existing purchasing or procurement policy, and then develop it so that it's one document. Kind of what Director Roberts was saying, where you have one document, an employee can look at it and say, okay, this is what I have to do to spend money.
And so even if it's what is the amount? Like, say, a construction contract, I think was 300,000 or something.
100,000, yeah, over 100,000.
So over 100, yeah. So if it was over that, and you chose A, B, or C of the procurement policies according to the situation, then if it was over that, you'd have to bring it to the board and explain why you chose, why you couldn't choose competitive bids, and then at some point the board may say, well, try again later, or reword the bid. Of course, you usually would already do that, but, okay, was there anything else you wanted to say?
Well, again, we're trying to get everything into one document, and I think there are things that come up as we implement these procurements that aren't mentioned in the existing procurement documents. So, for example, do we even have budget for this? Where's the money coming from? Has it been appropriated? That's something that we, I think, don't check enough, or don't check. It isn't explicit that we need to check and make sure that we actually have appropriated money to make this expenditure. And so that can get you in trouble. So appropriations seem to be,
And that's what the board should always ask, probably, right?
Right.
As it comes up.
right. So that's one example of the various different things that happen. There's been a process of reviewing invoices, reviewing contracts, reviewing deliveries, and trying to match them together. But again, it's not explicitly spelled out anywhere. It's just a practice. So we want to include that all into one policy.
Yeah, I think it would be very, really important, especially with the CAP project, talking about that amount of money. And although I guess our manager would be handling a lot of that too. And my last question was on this procurement, new look at this and putting it all, getting it organized and putting it all in one place. Is the administration committee, did they look at this? Are they involved in this?
Not yet.
Seems like it would be
yeah.
more administration than rate and budget, I would
Yeah,
say.
administrative committee is a policy level committee. Yeah, it's just not, it's not close enough for that, but
It
will be in the next few months, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I just had like a document statement, I guess. 5.5, the competitive bids that kind of touches on it is more well-defined in 7, and I'm not sure what 5.5 is really trying to accomplish. It's like projects of a significant size generally greater than 100,000 will be awarded via competitive bid, where Section 7 is like explicit with the ranges, over 100 is subject to the state bid rules, and 25 to 50 or whatever it is. Seems like we define it really well in 7, somewhere else. In 6.3. 6.3 seems to define it really well, where 5.5 makes it vague, and it just seems like kind of, you'd probably
Right.
just clean up 6.3 to cover what you're trying to get in 5.5.
6.3 is, yeah. Again, it's not in,
Yeah.
it's not informed, but yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, it just seems like 6.3 really defines it nicely, and it's clean, and
And then in the.
5.5's,
5.5 competitive bids, yeah.
yeah, it's just kind of a loose.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And then is our like sole sources, is that like board approved on an annual or biannual or
The
something?
annual, or the annual maintenance contracts, or just sole source? So one of the sole source items, for example, is we use like a SCADA integrator because it's, they're specialized, they know the system. It doesn't make sense to go out for bids, right? Competitive
100%.
bids. So there are cases where sole source makes sense. So I think that's what, if that's what you're talking about.
Well, so like, is that, like, because there's probably a handful of things, right, that are sole source. Are those like board approved at some point? Like, do they initially start as like a competitive bid? Like, that one's kind of unique, but like if we do a big project and you're buying new VFDs and, hey, we use Allen Bradley, but
Right.
if we're going to start a big project that might have a lot more drives than anywhere else. once
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
bidded, does it
If
go?
the reason isn't there for a sole source, then it would be a competitive bid, and if it's required board authorization, we have. Even if it's not a competitive bid, it still requires board authorization.
Right.
So the process is different for different types of procurement, but the authorization to spend the money is either board approved or manager approved, and that's a cost level test. So 30,000 under general manager, 30,000 over board.
Right. And so I guess I'm trying to see if there's a way to make the sole sourcing like easier or more defined. Like, I guess, how is sole source defined? Is that just manager's discretion? Like,
Well, if I could chime in, so usually there's a process to that. So for example, if our operations manager wants to sole source something, he has to fill out a form, check that it's sole source, he has to send it to Bob and I explaining why he's sole sourcing it, why it's required, why nobody else can do it. And then once we both review, agree, and approve it, then he can move forward. But we have to go through that review process to make sure that it's on the up and up, basically, that he's not just going
so
with
it's
this vendor.
management level only. It
Yeah.
never comes to the board. I mean, except unless it's a big contract or something.
Yeah, unless
but-
it's a.
Yeah, if it's below the 30,000, management can authorize it. So
Okay.
the approval for the waiver of the process is administrative. The approval for the actual authorization to spend the money depends on how much money it is. If it's over 30,000, it comes to the board.
Okay, anything else, Casey? Polly, or? Okay, thank you, Bob. And then we'll move on to item number 8D, consider authorizing execution of amendment number 1 of the Carpinteria Groundwater Sustainability Agency, CGSA, the JPA agreement for action, Bob.
Yeah, so this is back from the last meeting, and it's in your packet. I don't think I have any. Let's see here. This is basically amending the JPA agreement to streamline some of the procedural hangups that we've been experiencing over the last couple of years with the GSA. It's currently approved by the city, so there are 4 members: the city of Carpinteria, the county of Ventura, the county of Santa Barbara, and the water district. So it's approved by the city. It's docketed for November for the county of Ventura, and probably the new year for the county of Santa Barbara. That they want to be the last ones to do it. And so this has been presented once before, and it's in final form. So we would like to get it approved, and they all have to be, the 3 have to be approved before the county of Santa Barbara will actually consider it. So
I move to approve.
Holly seconds.
You got a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
Yes.
Go ahead, sure.
Okay, yeah, on 76 of 107. And maybe because this is just part of it, but you have your definitions on the first page, and then on this page you deal with agency's annual budget, agency may. Do you think it would be a good idea to have a definition of the term agency on? Because it's in the first paragraph, what the CGSA means, what the agreement means, what the members mean, what the board means, and then you plug in the word, the entity agency, and I don't think it really actually spelled out.
I think it's in the original JPA. So it is.
So this is just a piece of it, the amendment.
This is just saying we're going to change the original in these areas.
Oh, okay.
So the original document, which I apologize, is not in there.
Yeah, but this is a change, so you ought to define it, I think. You ought to define what agency is.
It's defined in the original document. So we're not changing that. So this would basically put that language into the original document where agency is defined.
Oh, I see. Because you defined all the other ones. Okay, and this is basically the voting, to clarify the voting percentages. So I think that's a good idea. Okay.
I'll remind you that there was some question about what happens when there's only 3 members. And so under item 1, we say, but no less than 4 directors. And under, let's see, under 1, it says supermajority means 2/3 or more of a quorum, but in no less than 4 directors. Quorum, no, that's not where it is. Let's see.
Yeah, and you had that, I remember you did a matrix, kind of a chart on that to make it very clear in the previous time we looked at this. You know, in this case scenario, this is where it comes out. So that explained it well to me.
Right, okay.
Okay.
Do you have a motion in a second?
We have a motion second. This is discussion. Any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Director Holcomb?
Yes.
Director Johnson?
Aye.
Director Roberts?
Aye.
Director Balch? Director Van Wingerden?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Then we move on to item number 8E, consider cap update for information, Bob. And Rob Morrow, is he online?
Yeah, actually, it's not going to be Rob. It's going to be Chris Malgin and Amy Stevens from WSC. So they are online, and I'll drive. Chris, if you want to just tell me when.
Sounds good. Can you all hear me well?
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Bob. So just as a quick introduction, I helped Rob or supported a presentation last April, but I'm Chris Meljohn with WSC, been working with Bob here and Rob on this project now for the last 2 years. So this is kind of a second series of presentations that we'll be giving to your board on a status update for CAP. And what we have for today's agenda are the project cost updates. Last time Rob spoke, we were still waiting on those from the design engineer. We've now since received those and are prepared to present them to your board today. We'll go over the design changes that were made between the 50 and 75%. We'll then kind of feed that project cost update into the program funding update. And then Amy will speak a little bit about public outreach. And then we have a similar slide as the last presentation on upcoming milestones. So Bob, you want to move us forward? So this table here presents the project cost update. In the first column is what was presented to your board last April, which is based on the 50% design. And then the column next to that is the most recent cost update that was prepared based on the 75% design. And so in short summary, there was a cost reduction. This is in line with the effort that took place in the springtime of last year or this year for the value engineering process. And in addition to that, the costs that are reflected here in 75% design also reflect more detailed quantity takeoffs, less contingency or assumptions being made. And so we do see some reduction based on that. I'll kind of go into a bit more detail on the next slide, but we'll stay here for just a few more minutes. Cost estimates were not uniform across the board, even though it sort of maybe looks like that. There were some components that went up. For example, our site work on site did go up by about $1 million compared to what it was previously. It's sort of embedded in that current estimate of 34.8. And so that's based off of sort of refining some of the project assumptions on the site work, as well as a lot of the process piping that hadn't quite been defined as a part of the 50% design. But then conversely, there were areas where costs came down considerably, process being one of them. I think we had a reduction of more than $1 million in our process, equipment and piping and everything that makes the AWPF function. So the net reduction was about $2.5 million from the prior cost estimates. And again, we'll kind of get into that more on the next slide. In addition to kind of reevaluating the capital costs for CAP, a bit of effort was spent on reviewing the O&M costs and trying to refine those numbers as well. So there were 3 areas that we really attempted to and are still in process of, but refining the chemical costs, labor costs, and then our monitoring and sampling. So for chemical costs, this past early summer, we received updated quotes from chemical vendors that fed into the cost spreadsheets, as well as sort of refining assumptions on chemical dosing. But the range that you see here, the 1.8 to 2.3, is largely based on the expected range for chemical usage, with varying kind of dosing strategies that sort of result in more or less chemicals, with the trade-off perhaps being additional operational effort for more frequent membrane cleanings, because we're dosing less chemical upfront that might prevent those cleanings or delay those cleanings. For labor costs, this past couple of months, we've been reaching out to other AWPF facilities to get an understanding on how they operate. CAP is a little bit unique in the sense that there aren't many AWPF facilities that are co-located with their wastewater facility and can share resources. Monterey, One Water, and Morro Bay really kind of being two examples with similar capacity. But Morro Bay has yet to really start up. They're just sort of in their infancy of startup, so they are not in full production. So that really kind of lended itself to kind of use Monterey One Water as an example. And so we are refining our labor costs based on their example. And then sampling. We received quotes from the lab quotes that are being provided to SoCal for their Pure Water SoCal project. And that helped also refine that number. And that was a refinement and benefit or down from what we had assumed last January. Next slide. So this slide will kind of show some of the design changes that we made. It's sort of a bit iterative. So this is the layout here that is on the slide, shows our 50% design layout for the AWPF, the chemical facility, and then what may be hard to read, I'm not entirely certain, but sort of on the right-hand side there is our clear well. So this is the structure that holds and retains the purified water prior to it being pumped out to the injection well. So let's go to the next slide. There we go. So in red are all of the areas that were, I'll quote, effectively reduced from the project. And so there's some statistics here. Our process mechanical building area was reduced by 27%. Chemical storage area reduced by 17%. Our clear well, while I'm showing it completely grayed out, was moved to be from a standalone below grade tank to now being below the AWPF process area. So you can see that sort of on the bottom portion of the process building. We also removed a redundant UV reactor, and we changed the way we approached our soil improvements. And so I can kind of quickly touch upon some of these here a little bit more. So for the clear well, for example, reducing from 36,000 gallons to 10,000 gallons, that was a decision that was made as a part of the VE process. And the reason why we made that decision to reduce the capacity really kind of is trying to balance costs versus some operational flexibility. So at 36,000 gallons, which was the decision made during the preliminary design report and validation memo, that allows and provides buffer storage such that when one of the two injection wells are going into a backwash cycle, and now we no longer have that capacity to inject into the groundwater basin for that hour that it's in its backwash. If the RO system is continuing to produce at full capacity, now there's a mismatch between what the injection wells can take and what the plant is producing. And so the original decision to proceed with 36,000 gallons allows for the RO to continue production for that hour, and that tank will then just fill up. But it's not required for any other reason other than that buffer. However, there are ways to just manage that so it's not a problem. Virtually every day, one of the two RO trains will be coming offline or will go offline due to the diurnal flow pattern of the plant. And so if the backwash for the injection well is timed to be during that period where one of the RO trains is off, then we don't have a need for that additional storage capacity. What that also allowed us to do was move that clear well from its standalone facility to under now the AWPF. So there was a bit of a dual and compounding benefit to reducing that clear well down to 10,000 gallons. Let's see if there was anything, I guess, else, questions on any of the design changes. There were more that were made, but these were some of the more major ones that contributed to the reduction in cost.
I have a question. So
Question.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Yeah, please.
Actually, is this over? This is over at sanitation, at
Correct.
the same area that we've been looking at for years, right?
Yes.
Okay. So just kind of get me reoriented is the creek on the right?
It's here. Where the
The
cursor-
creek is on a page, sort of page south or slide south.
Okay, gotcha. So the creek is here, and it's going this way. So the railroad tracks are here. Are they here?
Yes, the creek is here.
So
The entrance to the treatment plant is here, and then you drive, currently, there's nothing here. You drive into the
okay.
wide open
And
area.
So wasn't part of the challenge, however long ago it was, that we needed to be further away from the wall or further away from the creek than
Yes.
allowed?
So there is a 50-foot setback requirement
Okay. So
from
did we- so this
the sort
accounts
of
for the
top edge
setback
of
that we
creek.
didn't have before.
And reducing the building size also helped achieve that goal. So the building that we show here is just slightly more than 50 feet setback from the wall.
Okay, so we have corrected that. Okay.
Yes.
And then I'm only asking because I thought you said you were going to move slides, but on the right-hand side, it says remove one redundant UV reactor.
Right.
And so how many are there? If we took out one, how many are left in terms of redundancy?
Yeah, so we only have one. The 50% design had 2 UV reactors. We reduced that to 1. Again, sort of an operational decision, if you will. The reality is UV reactors are very reliable. They don't require a lot of maintenance and downtime. Occasionally, you will need to replace the lamps, the UV lamps inside, but they have a warranty and sort of design life of about 14,000 hours. And we only need one. We only needed ever one. So the second one was always just redundant in the event that one was taken offline. So in consideration of the how well they function and the sort of how their general uptime, we can save $500,000 by removing one of the UV reactors from the
And you
facility.
don't think the risk is that high of just having the one?
Yeah, and I should.
All I'm just saying is you don't
I'm
think
not.
that-
I don't want to. I'm sort of spoke out of offhand. I don't know exactly if that's the number, but certainly it's. They are not inexpensive.
that we had, why did we have a redundancy in there in the first place? It must have been because we thought we needed it.
Just general, engineers, including redundancy to facilities like this. I mean, I think every other process has some sort of redundancy built into it. If we need 2 pumps to convey, processed water, we have 3 to make sure that at least one can be serviced or taken offline. But that's based off of a regularity for kind of maintaining pumping equipment,
Okay, so
which
you're-
is
you're
much
okay
higher
with
than it would
just
be
having
for a
the one.
UV reactor.
You're okay, Bob, with just having the one UV?
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea,
Save
it,
$500,000, but I'm just concerned about the risk, and so what he's saying is they're so super duper that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think the idea is that the unexpected downtime is so infrequent, and the planned downtime can be scheduled during, other maintenance, so.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good
Okay,
clarification, Bob.
Question then
Okay, good.
on top of Polly's. So when you're scheduling maintenance, and let's say 6 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours, there's no water being purified, so what happens to that water? It goes in the ocean, or?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we have a way to go, because, we run UV systems also, and actually, they are very reliable, and you can even change the bulbs while the system is operational, so that makes it fairly reliable, yeah, so it is.
Does the O&M cost include, like, the personnel?
Yes. Yes.
And then, did you guys look at what the numbers would look like if you didn't do the VE at all? Like, if you left it, did you guys do that at all?
As in, cost out the 75% design as if we hadn't done the VE?
Yeah.
No,
No.
we
So-
didn't cost that out because the cost estimate's based off of the quantity takeoffs. So somebody sits there and, measures exactly how much area the building is. And so from the 50% to the 75%, that design was advanced, the building was reduced.
Right.
And so we don't have those numbers. I think it would be more than, slightly more perhaps than the estimate that was presented last time.
Yeah.
But it would be close to that.
Yeah.
So
I guess-
for all intents and purposes, yeah.
I guess I'm just surprised, we see a 27%, a 17% building decrease, a 26,000 gallon decrease in the clear well. We
Yeah.
use a UV reactor and we go down 3%. And the UV
Yeah.
reactor accounts for 20% of that.
Well, right, and that kind of noted previously in some ways that there were things that went up from the 50% to 75%. So it's not a uniform reduction across the board. We did sort of, and this is kind of noted here, the modification of the soil improvement strategy. We're moving forward with it's called deep soil mixing. So they mix in cement with the existing soil using sort of a large rotating auger as a means of kind of firming up the soil underneath the building. This is in lieu of, or another example that you use, are driven piles, but those could be quite noisy. And the deep soil mixing is a, it's not the cheapest option, but from a benefit to the community, the project, it's certainly one of the least intrusive options. And that assumption that was made at 50% design between the 75% design did go up slightly for the deep soil mixing.
Does the present sanitary big tanks and the big structure they have there, does that have a similar soil reinforcement of some kind?
So my recollection, and Bob can maybe fill me in here too, in the past they've used the driven piles, so where they hammer pile with a large, very heavy hammer that's quite loud, and I believe it was not well received by the neighbors of the community.
That's what's under the existing. I was
Correct,
just
yes.
wondering, this is a dumb, whether the soil is different under the existing. sanitary district than it is under our project, but it isn't. They already did that. And I know that very well because my neighbor did that, to put in a little tiny swimming pool, 10 pylons, and I listened to that. Because there's tar under there, they discovered. Anyway, sorry. But, okay, you continue with your question. I had another.
That's all I had.
You are, oh, okay, I have one question. For the 75% design, what is the bottom line total output of water, potable water? Is it 1,000 acre feet a year?
Yes.
It is?
Yes.
Oh, that's good. Okay, the other comment I would make, and I hope that the board will get this on future meetings, the design and permitting, that's, 6.1 million, that's the third largest item, I guess. I think in the future, it would be a very good thing to know is to break out the permitting from the design, especially in the state of California, how the permitting costs is really an issue. I mean, I think that we'd like to see both that broken out, those two numbers. So that's all I had to say. Is that possible to do that?
Can you, I guess, maybe repeat the
Yeah,
the
the
question?
6.1 million is for design and permitting.
I see. Oh, okay.
And-
I'm sorry.
and-
Yeah.
And I think you'd want to, because it's a very controversial kind of subject, is how much of that is the permitting expenses?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That can be broken out in future tables if we'd like to
Yeah.
look at those numbers specifically. I just will note too, just because of the comment regarding the, sort of 3% savings on reducing the building by 25%. What is also not noted there, and what's not included that, we did move the UV reactor outside, and so it's under a canopy now. That canopy area is sort of what's shown there. You can maybe just briefly see it on the south end of the building. That sort of does make up some difference. So even though we've reduced the building by 27%, now we have a canopy area. So it's not a wholesale reduction of the building by 27%. If that makes sense. We probably were to go to the next slide. Are we on the program funding update side? I can't see it.
Yes, sorry.
Okay, great, thank you. No problem. So this is just a quick update. So Rob gave the good news last week regarding the additional Title 16, an increase of our state water recycling grant. So this is sort of the bottom line of what and how that, what that means for our project. So with the reduction in capital costs and the increase in grant amounts, our expected SRF loan amount is reduced from 47 down to 42 million. And then based on 1.7% that's now locked in, that annual payment is reduced from 2 to 1.8 million per year. And I'll maybe pause here if there are any questions.
Yeah, one of the things that I hope we can always look at is and what is my logic correct here? If I take 1.82 million per year, which is our debt cost for constructing and planning this, and I add 2.3 million a year operating and maintenance, and I divide it by 1,000 acre feet a year, that the O&M is 2,300 per acre foot, so I think it's about double with the other. So that would be $4,600 an acre foot, right? It would cost us to put the water into the groundwater basin. Is that the
I think it's
basic
close-
idea on how one
Yeah.
would figure it?
Well, that's one way to look at it. I think it's closer to 4.1, because if you go 1.8,
I chose
Yeah.
2.3, because of course it always goes up in.
right, so it's
As far as our O and M.
4.1
Yeah,
million per year divided by 1,000 would be $4,100 per acre foot.
yeah, plus the, no, it isn't, it's 46. 1.82 plus 2.3. Nope, you're right, it's 41. Okay, well, that's a good thing to keep a look at, and also for the, the public and everything else.
Question, Casey? Because Bob, did you say that Montecito and Santa Barbara right now are projecting their cost of desal is already over $5,000 an acre foot?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Why?
Go ahead, Chris.
I
Okay,
think
why don't-
it's,
Oh,
it's
sorry.
the,
I'll talk to her.
Well, I think also one of the things to consider on that is that desal is unlimited as far as how much you want to build it up, like a long-term drought. And the recycling is 1,000 acre feet, put and take a year. That's, if you run into anything worse than that, that's not gonna, as far as, and I was, in other words, that's kind of a different basis. And what I was made the point to Bob is that the state really should pay more of the recycling, because the recycling project takes pressure off the entire state of California, all of these projects, year in, year out, because we're not using money that can go to grow crops in the Central Valley or whatever. So it's a statewide ecological sound strategy. But as far as insurance for the Carpinteria Valley, it's kind of limited to, I'd like to see 15,000 acre feet, stored in our groundwater basin that could carry us through a few years of drought. And then we could also not put as much pressure on the other, water users in the Valley Goleta and Santa Barbara. But anyway, it's kind of the desal is a different kind of a different basis, a story, or the limit for what it can provide.
it's one of the comparators that we use to evaluate what additional water supply would
Yeah, and it
cost us.
started out as $3,000 an acre foot. Now they're saying 5,000. Wow. And the technology's improved, and the reverse osmosis, the filter costs have gone down. Maybe it's all power costs. That's the difference.
I think it's staffing and power that's driving the,
Yeah. Well, the
staffing has
whole
become more expensive.
Goleta, water purification plant, it's very large. They can operate it with 2 people, overnight, not 24 hours, but with the technology. Orange County, same way. I was just flabbergasted at how many people.
And that's what we've kind of concluded with this project is it would follow the same operating hours as the CSD plant, which is 8 hours a day on weekdays, and then a reduced staff on weekends.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
okay, so now I got a question for you, Bob. So what is the cost for water, to inject water? I don't want to get off subject here, but if we get spill water, what is our cost to inject water into the groundwater basin?
We're working on trying to figure that out right now,
Cool.
so we don't have a cost.
But that's part of the discussion. Okay, thank you. Chris, you can go on.
Okay. Why don't we, I guess, move to the next slide, and we'll introduce Amy Stevens with WC. She is in our communications group.
Hi, directors. I'm a strategic communication project manager based mostly in Southern California, but I work on reuse projects throughout the state. So I just wanted to pop in. I'll be reaching out to you soon to sort of kick off this phase of our public outreach. And our first step in this whole process is meeting with you all. So you've gotten a few emails from Bob and others about what those meetings will entail. We will strictly just be having a discussion about this project in particular. I'm hoping just to gain your insights, your thoughts, your concerns, having just an open conversation. I will take that information along with other research and knowledge we have and build some common messaging so we start having a consistent message around this project to eventually take it out to the public. We'll also be working really closely with Bob to do some intentional media outreach and sort of soft kicking off the community outreach. And then, so this is a next 6 months outlook. And then we have other initiatives in the longer term that we can talk about, but they involve a much more public presence. So first order of business is sort of getting everything in order internally, and then we'll take it out to the communities, to the electeds, to the media, and do some targeted outreach to gather support and just make this whole process as smooth as possible.
Any questions for Amy? Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Amy. So this is our last slide. Rob presented a very similar slide at the last board meeting. Some things have shifted around. We anticipate taking the IR addendum in November, and then also the JEPA and the lease agreement. I think we were planning on taking it at this meeting, but there were some items that we wanted to defer before we kind of finalize that agreement. Water supply and economic analysis might push out past December, but I'm showing it here for now. But the big takeaway, no change and no anticipated change in our advertisement date. So still expecting to receive bids, construction bids for the facility, pipelines, and wells come late spring, early summer of next year. So with that, if there are any other final questions, I'd be happy to take them.
No, I think we're good.
All
Okay,
right.
well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Bob, anything you want to add to this, or?
No, I think that covers it. We'll keep coming back and reporting on what's happening.
You guys, can I ask just one more real quick question? So, Bob, what's the canopy made out of? Okay. I can just see the, like, creek coming down one night or, okay. It's okay. But it's not like canvas. It's not like a tent or anything. No. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, then we move on to item number 8F. Consider process to appoint district board seat for information.
Yes, thank you. So as you know, Director Johnson will be leaving us in December, and so we're very sad to see her go, and we'll take that up at the next meeting. But we have been working to find a replacement, and we went out with some advertising and direct mailing in District 5 to see who was interested, and we did get some interest, but it ended up we only had 2 applicants for the seat that submitted applications by the deadline, and so we have those, and we've reviewed them. They do appear to qualify in terms of where their address is. And both are registered to vote within that district, which are 2 requirements of the elections office. So we're proposing that we have a meeting on October 30 to actually interview the candidates, and so wanted to get your thoughts on that. So we'd have a special board meeting on the 30th. The 2 applicants would come and answer any questions that you may have before you make your decision. At that board meeting, you may give staff direction to prepare a resolution for the November 13th meeting, which would be the last meeting that Director Johnson will be here, or appointing one of those candidates. And the idea is to have someone sworn in by the December meeting to take the seat.
I have a question in the sidebar. I saw one applicant. Were there two? Did I
Yeah,
miss-
we did send you two applications. There should have been two applications.
Oh, I know. I only saw one.
I got two.
Huh.
Yep.
Maybe I didn't click.
Yeah, they might have been two different files.
Or sometimes if you click the second one, it's blank and you have to, okay, I probably did that. Okay, thank you. Well, it's good.
Yeah, if you
Great.
if you need assistance, I can send it to you again.
That's good to hear. Yeah.
But again, I think the important thing is want to get your feedback on whether you want to interview these candidates or if an application is enough. And I think we are having a special meeting on the 30th for union negotiation purposes, but I think it would be good to have this interview process as well.
Holly?
Yeah, that's what, so you were just, do you want to have the interview process or do you want to have just decide by application?
In the past, we've had the interview process. I think it's worked well.
Okay.
Okay, and this will be an open hearing when we do the interview?
We're
process?
checking on that. In the past, we did it as a closed session item, but I'm working with council to figure out whether it can be in closed session.
Okay, can we also have a list of questions? And I will have to figure out between the five of us how we're going to do this, but I think it might be helpful that we have some ideas on.
Sure.
First of all, we don't all ask the same question, but for the same token.
Yeah, we kind of went down to the round robin, right?
Right, but
That's
for the
fine.
same token, yeah, I just like to see the five of us to come up with a plan that were organized and clear, so it is. So, yeah.
Would you like me to take a stab at the questions and send them out? Okay,
Please.
I can do that.
And then right now, you're going to confirm that it's either a public or a,
Yes, so the agenda will be ready by Friday, and we'll make the determination before then.
if we're allowed to do it privately or
Yes.
publicly. And what was the other question tied to that? Yeah, so that both candidates should be aware of that process too then. I mean, it's,
Absolutely.
Okay. Any other questions from any board members? Okay. Then we move on to item number 9, director reports. We had the joint utility meeting, October 9, 2024. That was both Casey and myself. I'll take a stab at it unless you want. So that we met at the sanitation district headquarters. There was 3 members there, or the manager and 2 board members from sanitation. There was Casey, myself, and Bob. And then Wade was there. And then John from the city. And I think, yeah, that was about it. So the main thing was Bob walked through the Carpinteria purification project, explained to everybody what was going on there. He also walked through the sustainable groundwater management, the program, the way we're doing it. As far as major capital project, the one that was the main discussion point was both the Carpinteria Creek and the Carpinteria Avenue Bridge, which really where it's going to be a big project for Carpinteria, a lot of money, and I think obviously the Edison gas companies and water company need to coordinate with the city, and I think that pretty well covered it, unless you got anything else. Yeah, anything else that I missed, Bob, or is it? I thought it was a good meeting. I think it's the part that surprised me a little bit when done well. I think it could be an issue for everybody that the city is struggling with getting bids because you got to meet federal guidelines on wages, which is part of their grant process. So, and I'm sure we'll have the same issues when we get to this, Bob, or no? Because our grant process, are we going to talk federal wage guideline or?
We're required to pay California prevailing wages, which are higher than the Davis-Bacon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So that covers that one. And then we have 9B, the CCWA Operating Committee meeting, October 10, 2024. Bob?
Yeah, there was a couple of items that took up most of the time. The first item was the staff at CCWA identified a risk for carryover water that they believed was in the contract, and that was, we have water from 2024 going into December, and the new water year starts for the State Water Project in January. And in the contract, they read it as we lose a portion of that water based on some formula, and so that sort of sidetracked the meeting, and we ended up discussing, well, how do we get our water out of there so we don't lose half of our carryover. After the meeting was done, staff contacted DWR and clarified, and it turned out that wasn't the case, but it did begin a conversation about what are the risks of losing carryover water, because we have a significant amount of carryover water going into next year, and there can always be a spill at San Luis Reservoir, and then when that happens, we typically don't have a plan. We don't have a groundwater basin that we can turn to, and so that's one of the reasons why in the consent agenda, this supplemental water program, transfer program popped up. They want to get that in place, and so even though we got sidetracked, the result was good because now we're starting to prepare for the event where we might have spill at San Luis Reservoir. I'll also be bringing back in January, February, an agreement that we're going to try to get extended with IRWD for banking in their bank. Won't cost us anything, but we need to get it in place before, the middle of the winter. So, the second thing that we talked about was the what we call the policy on water usage to maintain pipeline health. And so one of the things that's happened in that Coastal Branch pipeline is during periods of the year, very little water is being used, and so very little water moves through the pipe, and so the water quality starts to degrade. And typically what will happen is during those periods, CCWA will request to move a certain portion of water into Lake Cachuma for the Cachuma members. So basically they're delivering some of the state water. That works out. It moves the water. We get water. We use it. Deliver it through Cachuma. But there are periods of time that have been happening more and more where the ability to move water into Lake Cachuma, for example, if it's spilling, you can't do it because it'll just spill over the dam. Or there's biological reasons why you can't move water into Cachuma during certain periods of time. And so there have been a couple of incidents where they've had to just waste the water to move the water. And so the policy was trying to figure out who gets the bill for that, or whose water is it, and the value of that water, who gets to pay for it. So that there's been a long discussion of whether we do it by reach or whether we do it, as a group by allocation. And so we're leaning towards that second one where everyone pays by their allocation for those lost acre feet and the cost of that operation. So they've gotten the policy pretty close to finished, and I believe it's coming back at the next, maybe in the January CCWA meeting. And then there was a final item that we talked about, where there were funds allocated for a capital project that was related to the Palenio Pass treatment plant. And it was basically a building that they wanted to build. It turned out that the cost of the building was too much for the capital funds, so they reallocated those capital funds to other projects that were already in the works. But that money didn't get all spent or won't get all spent in 2024, so they wanted to carry it over to 2025 to use it on the same projects that were continuing to go. So that was a discussion, and there wasn't really much resistance on that item. So that was about it.
Okay. And I know we've discussed this before, Bob, but does the district right now have any injection wells available to us right now of our wells that we can start injecting with spill water?
We do, but we don't have permits to do it.
So I'm
Yep.
assuming we're working on permits?
We are working on permits. I just received an email from the regional board that to set up a meeting to discuss the permits. But the permits are relatively expensive because you have to do what's called a pilot test, which is an expensive endeavor. And so we're working through that. We did prepare a grant application to the Bureau of Reclamation to include a pilot test in the Smiley Well reconstruction.
Right, but we, including Smiley, we do have 2 other wells that are capable of injection, right? So
Yes.
okay.
I thought we got the permit even to test to inject water because none of our, our big wells have the ability to do that, to run both ways, right? I thought we had got a permit. No, we applied for it, and then we didn't follow through. Because I remember thinking it cost $26,000 just to get someone to fill out the paperwork to apply for a permit.
Yeah, so
But we didn't actually get the permit yet, right?
no, so in the time we drilled El Caro well, which was in 2012, which has ASR capability, to now, the state board created a general permit for ASR. So it used to be waste of discharge permit that you would have to get. So it's a different permit now that you can enroll in. And to enroll in that permit, you have to do a pilot test at each well, roughly 6 months of pilot testing, and put water in, pull it out, do all kinds of water quality analysis to show that you're not liberating arsenic and various, you're not creating trihalomethane. So there's a bunch of things that they want to know if you inject water, what happens to that water when you retrieve it, and what is it doing in the aquifer. And so you need to do those pilot tests for each injection site. So, and it gets expensive because you have to have a hydrogeologist kind of running the program to do the testing. You have to collect the water. You have to send it to a lab. They have to do a bunch of tests to send it back to the regulatory agency.
Yeah, you're an engineer and you have a lot of experience in water issues and testing and the chemicals that you may find or you may not find. Well, I can't ask you for your opinion, I guess, because I would say you're injecting water that you would inject into a drinking, in drinking water normally from Kachuma gets treated, sure. And we that's what the water that comes out of our tap, and. Yeah, you just wouldn't think there would be that much danger, although you sure do want to be careful. If you're going to inject wastewater or something in untreated water into the aquifer, I might understand. But just the fact that the water, no matter how good it is or pure it is, you don't know what it's going to interact with the earth under there.
Yeah, geochemical reactions can occur.
Okay, That's interesting, and that's important for the public to know, too, that it is an issue, and because I guess people are doing it all over the state, so I guess they must have a history of problems that they've may run into, but that's surprising to me.
Yeah, for the CAP project, for example, we did geochemical modeling and actual what we call bench tests, where when they drilled the El Caro monitoring wells, they actually captured the cuttings and they preserved them as much as they could, and then they took them to a lab and they put them in a tube, and then they ran purified water through, water that would come from the same processes that we're planning to have at the wastewater treatment plant, ran through, and then they tested the water that came through, and they said, oh, was there any arsenic that was liberated, for example? So sometimes when you have a water that's different in chemistry, it gets into the formation. There's pyrite, which has high arsenic, but it's bound in the geology. You introduce that water, and it can liberate that arsenic, and then you have a problem. And so you have to change some of the, try to change the pH, try to change the redox potential. There are a bunch of different chemistry levers that you can pull to try to make sure that you don't.
Oh, yeah, that's very interesting, especially when you think in our aquifer, there's just empty space, pretty much. It's, 40,000 acre feet of storage available.
It's empty pores between
Yeah,
little
yeah.
granular, could be various things in those little granular.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your patience. And,
No.
and also when I hear things like this, if I see it on the internet, that something's related, I pick it up and I share it. I drive everyone nuts, but it's
We're
good
good?
information.
Thanks.
Yes.
Thanks, Bob. So we move on to item number 10, General Manager's Report for information. 10A, the financial.
Yeah, packet page 83, you have your water sales to actual report. So through September, sales are 16 acre feet above budgeted projections, and those will even out as we get into the fall weather. On the financials, our water sales through August are at 17%, and we're 17% through the year, so they're right on track. And our overall expenditures are at about 14.5%, so just under that 17% for the year. You may have noticed that a couple of new reports in your packet, which we will include going forward each quarter, which is the LAIF investment report or any other investment report, depending on where. We'll have another report for you next month to go over our investments, but that's included there, and that's just for information. And then you also have our quarterly project status report that you may recall seeing before, and so we'll bring this forward to the board each quarter, which lists out the ongoing projects, the budget, the expenditures, and the balance that's left over, so you can see where we are with each of the projects. And again, those are just for information.
Now, these are excellent. Thank you very much. Really, they keep getting better, the budget reports.
Okay, Bob, so then you go to 10B.
Yeah, I'll just point out a couple of things on the engineering report. The liver project is going well. We're on phase 3, which you may have noticed on the corner of Casitas Pass and 192. There's a contractor that's been working there in a big hole. 22 is our biggest lateral in terms of volume. It really moves a lot of water into town, and so they've been working on that one for the last week, and then they have several more to complete and hopefully wrap up by the end of November. So that'll be quite an achievement. On the intake letters and intent to serve letters, a lot of ADUs and JADUs happening. Nothing really in the way of big development. We just have been getting a lot of these ADUs and renovation type projects. And then on the operations report. It does say that the well status under item 4 is, those are offline, but that's a mistake. All 3 wells are online and being pumped. We
I
also,
saw that. I was going to ask you in October.
yeah.
Okay.
We also have been, you may recall, we have a aeration mixer up at Gubernador Reservoir that's been being used to control our disinfection byproducts. And, that particular reservoir is at the very far end of the distribution system. And so by the time the water gets there, it's been traveling for quite a while. It gets treated with chlorine at Keter Treatment Plant, gets treated with chlorine at Ortega Reservoir, gets treated with chlorine at Carpinteria Reservoir. And so by the time it gets there, it's been burning off any organics in the water with the chlorine, and it's been many days. And so that's a recipe for disinfection byproduct generation. And so our solution was to put an aerator inside this tank to move the water around, expose it to air to volatilize these, in particular these trihalomethanes. And that's been working great, but it finally stopped working, and so we've ordered a new piece of equipment. We'll be getting that soon at the end of October and replacing the old one.
Is it also going to be aeration?
It is aeration, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Lead service line inventory. So you may recall the drinking water program made a requirement that we survey our services for lead, and so we started that early this year, and it was due October, and so we just submitted our final survey, so that was completed. I think that's it for the operations report, and I will move into the water supply report if you don't have any questions.
No, go ahead.
Is the lead lining thing annual or biannual, or is it one and done?
It's a one and done, although generally with these information collection type rules, they're planning to implement some sort of replacement or corrective action. So water supply, this says August, and there's a timing issue with the reports that we received from COMB, so this reflects a month and a half ago what the water surface water supply is. Kachuma, so this is before October, which is the new Kachuma year. So you can see we're carrying a lot of water. Typically, this is about 1,000 in September. I can guarantee you we didn't use that much water in August. So we're going to carry over a lot of water. We did carry over a lot of water in October. So that's an issue with the potential spill. The lake is relatively full. And in this situation, if we did have ASR in place, we would be probably injecting water right now to get some of this water out of the lake so that we could keep it. Same thing with the State Water Project. A lot of, almost a full year's allocation at 100%, 2,000 acre feet. A lot of water sitting in San Luis Reservoir at risk. And so, again, one of the reasons why the transfer program is being generated at CCWA and one of the reasons why we've reached out to IRWD to renew the agreement that we had in place.
I have a question. This says Kachuma. Is it San Luis that's going to spill or Kachuma? I mean,
Both. Yeah, the blue is
state water is San Luis.
yeah,
Oh, I see.
blue is Kachuma, red is State Water.
I see. Right. Okay. Good.
As I said, groundwater production we're a little bit higher than last year, but lower in these were dry years, so we're pumping more. Our target this year in fiscal year 25 is 1,000 acre feet. I think on the sales report earlier you saw this, but we are ticking up a little bit. And the good news is the heavy months, which are July, August, September, were a little bit better than we were last year on all three of those months. So sales over time, this is kind of just showing you the two different components. The agricultural sales are a little bit higher than the M&I sales. Compared to the precipitation, there's really relatively no precipitation, so there's not really a correlation there. This is the target line, as you recall, the red line being the target and the blue line being kind of the max we've seen. For M&I, we're slightly below the target line, but pretty close, which is good news because that target number of at the end of the year is what we use to budget revenues. So on ag, it's a little bit higher than the target line. So you can see the first 2 months, it's actually tracking pretty close to the maximum expected. Total, this is right on the line, so you can see where we're projecting. Our target is 3,500 in the budget, and so if the water use stays where it's been in the last 2 or 3 months, we should be okay. Lake Cachuma, as we talked about, it's still pretty full. We've seen a little decline this year, but again, it's 92%, so easily a small storm could make the lake spill. So it's an issue that we're very concerned about. Overall rainfall summary in Carpinteria, it's a little early to tell, but percent to date, 31%, or 31% of normal, so we're a little behind. Looking at the whole Cachuma watershed here, pretty full. Gibraltar's doesn't have very much storage, so it goes down quickly. Jameson is nearly full. Cachuma is nearly full. Statewide, we're seeing some dry areas of the state. You can see that's not our case locally, but again, the state water that we receive is generally comes from this area right up here. Reservoirs pretty much across the state are at average levels. Oroville's the state water reservoir, so you can see for this time of year, it's right at the average. Shasta, which is the Central Valley Project reservoir, pretty close to average. Cachuma, very full. Casitas, very full. So the local reservoirs are very full. San Luis Reservoir is a little bit above. This is a shared reservoir between the State Water and Central Valley Project. And it's really an operating reservoir, so it doesn't tell you a lot other than people aren't taking water, so it's not going down. So, and that's it.
Thanks, Bob. Any questions? Then we move on to the dates and items for the agenda. So we have a meeting scheduled on Wednesday, October 30th at 5:30 at City Hall.
It'll be at the district.
District
Yes.
office, okay.
I had something for that. It's some future agenda item. Would be great to get like a comprehensive look at ASR. We kind of talk about it in patches, and I guess it'd be great to see like kind of where we are and feeling it out and what a path forward might look like, and just to kind of encapsulate it all. It's a little scattered for me.
I'll put it on the agenda.
Yeah, and how much money we are saving, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have the one meeting scheduled on October 30th at 5:30 at the district office. Then the Carpinteria Valley Water District Board meeting of November 13, 2024, 5:30 p.m., Carpinteria City Hall, 5775 Carpinteria Avenue, Carpinteria, California, and we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Recording stopped.